in the past, the state party has not been as helpful as it could be to candidates. I think it's been more than that. I think it's been an impediment. There has always been a disconnect, I would certainly say, I think amongst the membership of this group, for example, between their support for the Democratic Party and their dislike of the state Democratic Party. And particularly, I'm talking about the leadership of the state Democratic Party. And by that, I mean Joe Reed.
Just put your cards on the table.
Well, let me just say this. I've got 6 cards right now with his name on it. I'll put those on the table. There is a perception that Dr. Reed is not a valuable asset for the state party, and in fact is much more about Joe Reed than he is about Democratic candidates. Do you think that's true? And if not, maybe that's the first message we need to start putting out, is that he's not the problem that he's perceived as, because he's perceived as a problem. Who wants to bite that out?
Yeah, I'll take it first. Let me just say this, and Dr. Reed has, and let me preface my statements by saying the organization has never endorsed me. Alabama Democratic Conference is the main organization. I've never been endorsed by that organization. But in light of that, Dr. Reed, I recognize his importance in the history of the state of Alabama as far as especially reapportionment. The reason that I sit here before you right now as an African-American member of the House of Representatives is because of some of the work that Dr. Reed did and others. Having said that, I guess I'll use a football analogy. The way that we lost as a party, and this is a big football state, the entire coaching staff would be gone. The way that Democrats lost. And if I use that analogy, I think we need to start over from scratch because of the way that we lost. And that does not mean that I'm calling anybody's name specifically, just that we need to start over. We've had some folks that have been there for a while, and evidently may have lost touch with what was going on, not only in the state of Alabama, but the rest of the country, as far as messaging and some other things. So with that being said, I hope that the message there is we need to look at our coaching staff, and if we still have people that are part of the previous coaching staff, we may need to look at some new coaches across the board.
You ought to consider politics. Richard, you want to take a bite at that?
Yeah, let's take a bite at that. I've known Dr. Reed now for... Sorry, guys. I've known Dr. Reed now for 35 years and have worked with him as being a delegate to the Democratic conventions, been on the Young Democrats, been on the SDEC, and I admire his contributions to the party. Folks, we are looking at a structure that is defined by the federal courts. I spoke with Ed Steele last week about something called a consent order. A consent order was entered back in the 80s, and am I right, calling for at-large representation on the SDEC, calling for gender recognition on the SDEC, equal men, equal women, calling for more minority participation. That consent order was built upon over the last 20 to 25 years. It's not going to be reversed anytime soon. We spoke about herding cats earlier. This is a monolithic problem that Judge Kennedy, God bless you, I hope you can solve. I'm not on the SDEC. I do not have a vote. If I had a vote, I would vote the entire leadership out, using the football analogy. I don't like to lose. I like to build. And anybody who's been part of, when I was president of the Eastern Area Democratic Club, when I started the first Southside Baptist Church, Southside Democratic Club 25 years ago, you know that I like to build. We're going to rebuild the local party. We're going to have folks that are captains in every precinct that will identify the Democratic votes, that's going to turn out the Democratic votes. And yes, every Democratic candidate will have that voter ID in 2 years when we get ready to run. Okay? So the answer is, this is a problem that is not easily solved, getting rid of the current leadership. But we can take, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And here's the first bite, I think.
Judge Kennedy, would you like to address Dr. Reed's leadership, say before the meeting in a couple of weeks?
Well, you know, again, being a judge, you know, I try to get all the facts. And as I said before, I've had a relationship with Joe Reed for many, many years. Not a personal relationship, but is being a judge in Montgomery for 10 years and being on the Supreme Court for 11 years and being in Democratic politics. I've always had a cordial relationship with Dr. Reed and other members of ADC and New South and other organized labor and so forth. The only thing that I can tell you is that as I move through the process of learning more about the organizational infrastructure, I believe, first of all, that everyone should be treated with courtesy and dignity. I think everyone should have an opportunity to be heard. I don't know anything about or the fact that I can't control the way people vote once matters are brought before the SDEC. But from what I understand, part of the problem is the way that many SDEC members feel as it relates to whether or not their voices can be heard, much less are being heard. That's something that we can fix immediately. But I agree with Richard, when you are imbued in a culture that's been going on for years, it's hard for a new chairman in times like these, in my opinion, whether it's me or anybody else, to walk in there with a sledgehammer and say, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dismantle our party infrastructure because there are bad things about it. Now, the next thing we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to go out and we're going to recruit new Democrats because they're all going to want to be a part after they've read the paper about how we've literally come to blows. I don't want that to happen in the first 6 months of when we're trying to come up with a recovery plan. People in Montgomery may control the party infrastructure, but the people in Montgomery do not control the voters. They do not control our ability to go out and solicit new members with a new message and money and organization. Right now, the Democratic Party is going to have a hard time paying its bills, period. And with the new legislation, there's no more money that's going to come down in big old lumps, 100,000 here, 100,000 there. The party is significantly in debt. It was debt that has been incurred years ago. It's a lot. And we've got to figure out a way to raise money to pay off that debt. We've got to pay the rent on occasion for the building we're in. And we've got to stabilize the patient before we can even worry about the cure. So part of my job, and we're going to have a new staff, and I think you're going to be very excited and pleased, who I will name as the new executive director of the party. He's actually here tonight. Some of you may, I'm sure you know him. And I'm sure some of you may know who I'm talking about. He's going to be a breath of fresh air. He believes in grassroots organization. He's smart, a lot smarter than I am. He's got a master's degree from Vanderbilt. He's willing to work for little pay, and he's enthusiastic. And so I think with him on the team and the new staff that we're bringing in, we've got to have someone to raise money. We've got to have someone to provide services and information to our legislative delegation. We're going through redistricting.
That's right. That's
going to set the course of events for the rest of my life, probably. And do we have anybody right now at the Democratic Party who's doing anything about it? No. And we've got to get started. So those are the challenges. So while I'm worried about the situation with Dr. Reed, I'm worried about, and it's not about Dr. Reed, it's about the whole infrastructure of the party. Right now, the house is on fire. And I'm more interested in putting out the fire than I am going in and rearranging the furniture.